Hello again, Ian Stokey with Mastermind Games. Back for more Monsterpocalypse. Trying a new lighting setup since the last video turned kind of disastrously. This time, Lords of Cthul, Taskmasters, and Spitters. Lemon Yellow 09009. So I'll be basically doing one of everything on camera and wrapping up the rest off camera since I have a total of 10 models here. That'll take substantial time if I do all of them on camera. I'm just trying to ramble, so let's just get started. Let's start with this Taskmaster here. So, Taskmasters are a returning unit from the first edition of the game. They provide a speed buff to units within, I think, 2 squares. I'd have to double check, or units starting within 2 squares, which is a carryover from their original incarnation. They have an ability on their brawl attack, allowing them to basically throw a unit hit 2 squares. Rerolling dice and play for the attack, which is another thing they did in the first edition, as well as the telekinesis action, which allows them to move a unit 2 squares. And now Spitters, another returning unit from the first edition, or a ranged attacker, which have the extinguish action, letting them turn hazards into rubble. They also picked up all terrain for the new edition, letting them ignore rough terrain, so that helps in their mobility. And apply that color to the other 8 models, and back in a minute. Alright, next up, Warlock Purple. Yeah, we'll do this one. Using just enough water to thin the paint. Get the tentacles. Keeping the brush moist but not overly wet. Alright, and comparing this sculpt to the original, or I should say these, to the original blind purchase sculpts. These are once again larger and bulkier and with more detail in them. Alright, I'm just going to have to group in a funny way like that and just paint upside down. But pretty much a slug with a lamprey-like mouth and starfish-like tentacles. Grabbing a random Taskmaster. Getting its tentacles. So there was a packing error here, and I got an additional elite base instead of one of the grunt bases. I have some replacements on the way because I only want 2 elite spitters and 6 grunt spitters. So that will arrive at some point today, but I may not be in time for the video to finish up, so one of them might just have to sit out a bit. And making sure I get a nice solid coat, especially in the back there, because I wound up missing a spot on Yasha that I had to backtrack to fix. Because the tentacles on the bottom will be partially visible, I will at least give them a cursory coat here. The Taskmasters have a body type combining traits of both Yasha and Cthul. Both have the same tentacle mouths. Yasha has 2 eyes and clawed hands, but Cthul is nothing but tentacles from the waist down. In any case, all of the Lords of Cthul are inspired by creatures of the Cthulhu mythos created by H.P. Lovecraft, with Cthulhu itself being the most obvious reference. But there was a creature in the first edition called a Tanglix, which seemed to be inspired by the Gug. A head split down the middle, full of gnashing teeth, with tentacles off to the side. Now, the Tanglix is not currently in the second edition of Monsterpocalypse, but it's possible it could show up later. Of the 5 original monsters for the Lords of Cthul, only 3 of them are available right now. I am hoping the other 2 eventually do show up. I believe they will eventually, but Privateer also seems to be putting out more factions as well, and trying to get as much, basically a representation of the game as a whole out, so they might do a slower take on fleshing out the factions. So there's the Taskmaster. Alright, apply the rest off camera and move on. Okay. Dark Elf skin 09164. Going in and around the teeth here, avoiding the tentacles as much as I can. So filling in the fang-filled mouth of the spitter. And that's it for base coats. Let that dry completely, then I can start shading. Okay. Time to shade. Vampire red. Thinning with 1 part water to 1 part paint. And just going over the Warlock purple. Had a bit of a bad grip there. Keeping the brush nice and wet during this. Alright, let's see. And picking out a Taskmaster. I will go ahead and shade underneath, but I won't bother highlighting since that's going to be glued down, but excuse me. But very much the same, just going over, letting it flow into the crevices and the recesses. And of course the tentacles coming out of where a mouth would be. And apply to the rest. Okay, next shade. Dark Elf Shadow 09163. Quick little once over inside the mouth here. Apply to the rest and move on. Last shade, Sun Yellow 09008. Again, thinning with 1 part water, 1 part paint. Huh. Looks like some of the red isn't completely dry on the bottom, but that's alright. I can roll with that. Trying to get close to the tentacles without touching them, but if there's a little spillover, that's okay. All these creatures are non-Euclidean and extra-dimensional, so they don't have to follow by the same rules as other entities do. But then again, I think I'm just getting confused. So screw it, we'll just get this done. Okay. Now for one of the spitters, whose weapon is described in the card as a methyl bromide expectoration. Don't even have a clue what methyl bromide would actually do, but suppose we can find out. And there's a spitter. That's the shading. Apply to the rest. Once that's all dry, I can now start lighting them up. Alright, matte white to prep some lighting effects with. Taking a finer brush, that one. For the spitter, I'm going to just highlight that little circle in the back, the non-Euclidean gut. And for the Taskmasters, just a little dot in, oh yeah, that's too much paint. Just a little dot in their eyes to prep what's going to be a glowing effect. Okay, apply to the rest. When that's all dry, I can light it up. Alright, lighting effects, alien purple. Just kind of stuck. There we go. So, for the most part, my choices in coloration for lighting effects are a homage to the hyper forms in the original edition of the game, which were represented by separate figures cast usually in translucent plastic. And if I can get a grip on the brush I need, thinning the paint with 2 parts water to 1 part paint. Well, 2 to 3 parts water. This needs to be thinner than typical. Just get that in the eyes. Generally, you're going to want some of the light to show through. So I'm going to just use my brush and reabsorb some of that. I think that's got it. And for a spitter, down deep inside there. That mouth causes some weird shadows on my camera trouble focusing. Once that all dries up, I can highlight. Alright, time to highlight. Dark Elf Highlight 09165. Taking a ragged feathered brush, something like this. Straight paint, no water. Put most of that on a paper towel. Looks like there's nothing left. Let my camera focus and then just lightly dust the area to be affected. Going against any raised areas. Alright. Apply the rest of the spitters and move on. Next, Yellowed Bone, Creamy Ivory, 09144. Got a little mixed up there. Use something a little bigger, since this is the majority color on the models here. You need your brush completely dry for this, so I have several on hand, and I am focusing on the most readily visible surfaces only. So I'm not going to worry about the underside of the model here. And just for kicks, in terms of assembly, the spitters are one-piece models, but the taskmasters have separate arms that are metal. There's Taskmaster highlighted. And there's a spitter. Take care of the rest, move on in a second. Alright, Alien Purple next. I'm picking out 2 spitters to become my elites, so I'm doing a secondary highlight on them selectively, which is something that was done in the original edition of the game as well. I'm going to put this highlight just along, mostly in around that ridge of spines, at the tip of the tail. Let's do the other one for funsies, just because it's a shorter video anyway. That's not too bad. That gets those 2 a little more distinct, which will also help when I do what I do next. But Pixie Pink is next. I'll grab one of the other spitters for this. Stuck lid. A little more than that. I've got quite a few of these. And then going along the reddish, rubbery looking tentacles. stopping short of going inside the mouth here. And doing the same for a Taskmaster. Just worrying about the most readily visible surfaces. Going against the raised edges. A little more straight paint that crevasse there where the yellow seeped into, but not going to worry too much about it. Alright. Apply to the rest, and there's a little bit more to do. Okay. The next step is to prep the elite bases. So I keep these in the wrap until the last minute. First, I'm going to take a brush-on primer. And the elite bases have stars on them. That's literally the only difference between them and regular unit bases. Take that brush-on primer and very little water, in fact almost nothing, and just carefully fill in the star. Alright, need to let that dry now. Apply the other butt back in a minute. It's a little triggered. Easier to see when I got my hand in front of it, but that's the gist of it. Okay, last bit of painting. A little vampire red. I'm going to thin this out a bit like a wash for shading. Not a whole lot. Just enough to let this flow easily into the recess here. Just like that. And like that. Okay. Apply the other one, let that dry completely, and I can do some gluing. Alright, time to glue some models on. So I'm taking one of the elites, using a thick cyanoacrylate superglue, and be careful, this is the stuff that can and will glue your hands shut. Taking the elite base and centering that the way I want it, giving about a 10 count to set. Got it already. And then for the grunts, let's grab one of the grunt spitters. And the only difference between a grunt and an elite is the elite has an extra boost dice on its attacks and a commander ability that grants grunts with the exact same name within I think 2 squares, an extra boost dice on their attacks. So by carefully placing your elites and grunts, you get maximum efficiency, or I think I worded that in just about the most awkward way possible. And one of my taskmasters, I'm going to just test here, and Okay. I kind of guesstimate a few contact points on some of this, but that should be enough to secure it. Extend a little bit, a little bit, but it's a big model, so that's set for a bit. It's got it. And there we go. Taskmaster, Spitter, and Elite Spitter. Last step is to spray them down with a varnish to seal the paint job, but that's it. One more Monsterpocalypse video up next. Until then, I am Ian Stokey with Mastermind Games, signing out.